G'day and welcome back to the channel, the place to be if you're ready to quit capping your income by working with clients and instead skyrocket those sales by launching a six-figure course. Today, I'm going to be talking all about those tasks that you shouldn't be doing anymore in your business, especially if you're ready to scale that bad boy to a six-figure and beyond success. The only way you're going to be able to do this is if you outsource those $4 an hour tasks to a virtual assistant. And today I'm going to be telling you exactly why, what, how, and when you should be doing this in your business. If you're watching this video, there's already a good chance that you have an idea exactly why you would like to start outsourcing some of those tasks that you shouldn't be working on anymore to a virtual assistant. But I want to give you a few more reasons to really cement why this action in your business is so important and crucial to you being able to grow and scale your business to the next level. And just in saying that is the very first point. What got you here won't get you there. So whilst you might have been operating as a solopreneur, or perhaps you've had a really small and lean team, it's very much the case that you're likely going to have to expand that team by hiring a virtual assistant or other team members in order to get to that next level. This is just because you only have so much time and headspace available to you day, week, and monthly, annually, in order to be able to successfully run your business. And as I'll explain to you, there are actually 4 different zones of function that each of us operate in, and we're really trying to get to just one of those zones. That zone being the zone of genius. Now, Gay Hendricks outlined these 4 different zones in his book, The Big Leap. So if you want to learn more about them, please do go and read this book. It is a super valuable resource. But you might have heard the zone of genius talked about a lot, especially in entrepreneurial circles, or it referred to as the genius zone. This zone is where we want to be operating from the most amount of time. This is where we are so lit up by everything that we're doing. It doesn't feel like work, and all of our ideas are constantly churning and coming out, and we're just so lit up by our business. We are often energized when we're in this zone and not really feeling like we're doing any work. So this is the kinds of tasks and the responsibilities that we as the CEOs of our business want to be responsible for. And when I say CEO, I just want to also kind of highlight to you that this is the chance for you to start really thinking about, how do you want to show up in your business? Do you want to be just a business owner where you're kind of a slave to your business? Or are you ready to start stepping into the next stage of a business, which is as a CEO, where you are really the visionary, leading the charge, scoping out the vision for your business? So that's the zone of genius. The other 3 zones of function include the zone of excellence. This is where you're probably really good at a task, but it doesn't necessarily light you up. The zone of competency, where you can do something, but you're probably not the best person to be doing it and you really don't enjoy it. And the zone of incompetency. These tasks you are no good at and you should be spending no time doing them. These 3 different zones are likely where the tasks that you will outsource to your virtual assistant will come from. And so it's really important as the very first step when you're looking to begin outsourcing any of your business to a virtual assistant, that you have an idea what tasks are in your business and what zones they fall under in terms of your function in the business, so that we can slowly start transitioning towards working more solely in our zone of genius. Now, I just want to raise a little red flag here to remind you that this is going to be an incremental change. Rome wasn't built in a day, and it is going to take some time for you to train the staff and slowly start transitioning your tasks over to them. So please don't get too excited thinking that you're just going to start working in your zone of genius solely straight away. It is going to take some time. And if you're patient, you will eventually get to a place where you're mostly working just in your zone of genius or excellence. Finally, before you start looking to actually begin the process of outsourcing, I'm going to suggest that you go and do some real financial calculations to figure out how much you want to be earning and what you're projecting to earn this year. This is really going to help you to understand what your big goals are and how you're going to be able to achieve them, and how you're not going to be able to achieve them if you're doing everything that you're currently doing. Again, what got you here won't get you there. And so by knowing your numbers, you're going to have a better understanding just how much you need to be hiring a virtual assistant. The next consideration is, when should you start outsourcing to a virtual assistant? And if you ask me, my answer is yesterday, because if you're watching this video, it's likely already the case that you're feeling overwhelmed by all the tasks that you have going on in your business. And the question I pose to you is, what is your work hour worth? How much are you worth to work during an hour? It's likely the case, especially if you've been working with clients, that you have actually an hourly rate that comes under those services that you provide. And so for you to be working on tasks that you could otherwise outsource to a virtual assistant for as low as $4 an hour, you can quickly see just how ineffective it is for you to be working on those tasks when you could be working on other parts of the business in those zones of genius where you are actually going to be amplifying your income per hour, per week, per month, per year. Not only are these tasks super low paying, no matter who's doing them in this business, but especially if you are, but they are also forcing you to do more context switching than you should be doing. To explain context switching, it's basically when you move from one task to a different task that's unrelated. There's time taken up by your brain to actually get into the groove or the mode that the new task that you're moving to requires. And so there's so much time lost in business to you switching between different tasks that the way, if you're able to minimize the amount of context switching that happens and to minimize the variance in the types of tasks that you do, again, so that you're working really far more solely in that zone of genius, you're far more likely to actually be more productive and get more done in less time because you're not losing so much time to switching between different ideas. So I hope by this stage I've convinced you that you need a virtual assistant yesterday and that you're now starting to think about, what am I going to outsource to this person? And so there's a great couple of exercises that I want to introduce you to that will help you to get super duper clear on exactly which tasks in your business need to get the boot, at least to a new person. So to start with, I love task management. I'm kind of obsessed with ClickUp, as you'll see in my next video, which is going to talk all about how I use it. But what I love, one of the main features that I love, is that it actually allows you to estimate and track time for specific tasks, projects, and organizations. And so what I'm going to encourage you to do is actually to spend, even if it's just 7 days, tracking exactly what time you're putting into activities, and also coupling that with how much time you thought they were going to take you. Because I guarantee there are going to be tasks in there that you thought were going to take a lot less time than they actually did. And these are prime examples of where potentially you're not actually working in your zone of genius, and you may even be in your zone of competence or incompetence around that task. This is ready to flag, ready to pass over to your virtual assistant. By doing this, you're also able to start seeing which tasks are biggest priority for you to be passing on so that you can begin that incremental outsourcing that I mentioned earlier. If you would like to get more of an idea exactly how I like to use ClickUp and track my time, be sure to check out my ClickUp Coach mini course that takes you through every single step of how I manage my business and gives you copy and paste templates so that you can manage yours. Once you've got a really good idea of the type of tasks that you want to get off your plate and onto someone else's, it's time to create a position description. Now, the first thing I want to remind you of is that there is no such thing as a super VA. Don't be fooled into thinking that one person is going to be able to take all of that headache off your plate. It might be the case that you need to hire a couple of different people, but by starting to create a position description, you're going to get far clearer on how these tasks can be grouped together and what positions you actually need. Not to mention which one you're going to need first so that you can begin that incremental outsourcing. When it comes to creating a position description, there are 5 things that you need to consider and include on the description for yourself, and so that they know exactly what they're going to be doing. The first part is task responsibilities, which you will have found out through all of your work tracking your time. I break these down into daily, weekly, and monthly tasks because this actually helps me to figure out how many hours I'm going to need them for, and thus how much I'm going to be paying. When it comes to the hours, I want to encourage you to be confident and okay with not hiring someone full-time. You don't need to be putting someone on a full-time basis straight off the bat. In fact, the way I started with my virtual assistant was to start them off at 10 hours per week and to slowly grow their role in the business until such time as I could put them on full-time. You can do the same, and there are definitely people out there open and willing for those kinds of opportunities. You'll then need to consider the hourly rate, and this fluctuates greatly depending on exactly where you hire your virtual assistant from. I hire my virtual assistants from the Philippines and pay an average of $4 per hour for the tasks that I outsource. Of course, this is one of the lower rates, and you can find people for hire depending on their level of qualifications. So if you're wanting someone to come and fill in something like video editing or some higher skilled position, you could end up paying a little bit more. And of course, if you prefer to hire a virtual assistant closer to home and you're in more of a Western country, the chances are that you're going to be paying closer to the minimum wage or a common wage for those types of roles that someone would otherwise be being paid in a larger job. So be prepared for that. You'll also need to determine how frequently you're going to pay your virtual assistant. So you could choose to pay them monthly, fortnightly, which is bi-weekly if you're not Australian, or monthly. And you just need to understand for yourself what you're wanting to pay them, what basis and what frequency you're wanting to pay them on, so that you can include this on the position description and set their expectations ahead of time. You'll also want to have an idea of how you'll pay them in terms of if you're going to go through PayPal or use something like TransferWise or a bank transfer, just again to help set their expectations moving forward into the role. If the role isn't going to be customer facing, perhaps the English doesn't need to be as advanced as a different role that would be customer facing. So consider this, and also consider what written English they might need as well, because even if they're not seeing customers face to face, they may be interacting with them on your Facebook group or in emails. And so you really want to make sure that their English is up to snuff in terms of how you want them to show up in the role. Depending on where you're located, one of the downsides potentially to hiring from the Philippines could be the different time zones. And this is definitely something that I've had to figure out as I've gone along, but it is very work-outable. And depending on what kind of role, again, that you're wanting these people to fill, you'll be able to find someone who's either willing to work hours outside of the normal 9 to 5 in their time zone, or to be able to have someone at a different time zone handling customer complaints or correspondence in a different time zone when you're sleeping. There's a lot of pros and cons to it. So again, you need to really be clear on the role that you're hiring for and what requirements you'll need in terms of time zone. What I do to combat the time zones is to have a meeting that fits both of our time zones. So it's usually my afternoon in North America and their morning. This is great for us just to touch base, and then I try to, I suppose, run my business with an air of trust and to just have our task management handling everything that we're doing so they can work in their own time zone, and I can just trust that the work is being done because I can see it being done on the task management software. The final consideration for the position description is tech, and you really need to be very clear as to which kinds of tech your virtual assistant needs to either be familiar with or have access to. When it comes to softwares, you might have very specific needs around what they've already been trained up on, so that you're not spending more time or potentially wasting time having to train someone when you could find someone that's already skilled in that piece of software. It's really up to you though, because if you're able to find someone at a lower price who maybe isn't familiar with the software but you're willing to teach them, that could be a possibility. It might also be the case that you would prefer to train someone in your specific method of using that software, and so someone without any exposure to that software in the past might also be of benefit to you. The other consideration when it comes to tech is which devices they have available to them. For instance, I use Mac, and so for some roles, I might need someone who only uses Mac equipment or Apple equipment. But it isn't always just the PC or laptop or computer that they're using. I also have requirements around what kind of devices they have, whether it be their phones or iPads and things like that, depending on, the type of tasks that I'm giving them. This is totally something that you can specify as part of the position description, that they may already have access to certain softwares, especially if you're hiring someone like a video editor who might need specific editing equipment that you don't necessarily want to pay for. You want someone who's already familiar and using and has access to these softwares ahead of time. Again, everything comes down to which kind of tasks you're going to be outsourcing, so get super clear around that, and then you're going to have a really good idea as to what tech you need them to both have and be familiar with. And before we move on from the position description altogether, I just want to do a final reminder not to be looking for a super VA. They don't exist. And whilst it might sound really tantalizing to have all of those tasks you don't want to handle yourself passed on to one other person, it really is likely the case that that's not going to work. You want to be thinking about the fit for the role, for the business, and actually getting someone who their zone of genius is the task you're trying to pass on. Which leads me into the who section of the video. But before I start talking about who they need to be in order for you to hire the right person, I actually want to talk about who you need to be in order for you to be a great leader. Something that I definitely didn't consider when I first started hiring was how I needed to show up as now a CEO and team leader in order to both motivate and train my new staff. And so I actually fell off the wagon and ended up spending a lot of money on hours for my staff who didn't actually end up having any work to do because I wasn't very good at training them. So I just want to remind you to block time out in your calendar to really dedicate to the training of your team and to really building their excellence in their roles. It's going to be a new and potentially foreign territory for you depending on your background, so be prepared for it and just be aware that you're going to be learning through this process as well. The more transparent you can be with your team about the fact that you're learning as well, the more accommodating they will be, and they'll actually be able to help you build your leadership qualities. So as I mentioned earlier, when it comes to them or who you're going to be hiring, I really recommend that you're hiring people who the tasks that you're trying to outsource, those types of tasks and responsibilities fall within their zones of excellence or genius. It's not worth hiring someone who is in their zone of incompetence around a task. For instance, if they're not very good at bookkeeping, but you want to hire them for bookkeeping, you really want to make sure that you're hiring people who are just so killer at the things that you're trying to get off your plate. That way you've got a team of people working in the higher zones of function that are really just nailing everything it is that you're trying to get them to do. Now, a lot of the success of your new hire is going to come down to how you set and manage expectations with your new team member. The first thing I like to set is when they need to be checking in with me and which meetings we're going to be having on a regular basis. I like to meet with my team once a week and have a deep dive with an agenda of exactly everything that's going on in the business related to their roles. But you might decide to do this a little bit differently, again, depending on the type of role that you are hiring. You might not need to be meeting with these people at all, but it's likely the case that you'll need to have them communicating with you in some form. In my business, I use Slack for my team communication, and I've got various channels set up depending on the topics or the projects that they're working on for them to communicate with me through. The thing is though, I also ask my team to be checking in with me every single day just to say hey at the time that they're signing on and actually beginning work, so that I know that I have access to them should I need to ask a question on the fly, and so that I also know that they've actually showed up to work for the day. You can again have different ways of doing this, whether you want an email, whether you want to have a call every day, it's up to you, but it's really important that you do have some kind of check-in and that you set the expectation at the very beginning with your team so that they know what they need to be doing in order to keep you, the business owner, happy. When it comes to these meetings too, it depends on what kind of software you'd like to use, but this might be part of the tech considerations that you include in your position description. I use Zoom, and so I need to make sure that my team members have access to Zoom, can download it, or have used it in the past so that they know exactly how to jump on and have those amazing chats with me. The next consideration and expectation that I like to set with my team is holidays. And especially if you decide to hire someone from the Philippines, you'll run into the fact that they have a lot more, it seems to me anyway, frequent public holidays that go on. And I like to honor their public holidays and give them off. However, because I'm not in the Philippines, I leave it up to them to alert me ahead of time that they're coming up so that I can plan my business around when they won't be available. Of course, you can decide to honor or ignore holidays based on what works for your business. It really is up to you. But again, set this expectation from the beginning so that they know what they need to be doing and what they're going to be able to celebrate and not celebrate. You might also decide that you're going to give a certain amount of paid holiday leave off from the business. Again, set this expectation from the beginning. Finally, in terms of expectations, I also like to set an expectation around sick leave and when they need to let me know and how that works, just so that, again, I am prepped for my business. And whilst I know sick leave does just happen, I always ask my team that they give me as much notice as possible so that I can plan around their absence from the business. And then if they choose to leave the business altogether because they have another opportunity or they're not feeling the vibe, I also have expectations set around exactly how much time or notice they need to give me in order to exit the business gracefully. Whilst in my experience, it's super uncommon for this to happen, especially with Filipino workers, you do need to be prepared for it in the event that someone doesn't feel that they're a mesh for your business, because ultimately you don't want people working there who don't feel the vibe and want to be there. So be open to it, don't take it as a criticism, but just be prepared in case in the unfortunate or uncommon event it does happen. So I mentioned briefly before where you might be able to find a virtual assistant. And as I said, there's opportunities whether you want to have someone more local to you or if you're willing to hire from overseas. I have really only ever hired from overseas because I'm really interested in the cost saving opportunities. And I think that it's a great way for people who maybe don't have a huge amount of cash flow to dedicate to hiring out a team. It gives them the ability to get started. And there's a lot of conversation that goes on around the low cost and the low income that, say, Filipino workers get. But in my experience, my workers have been really grateful to be employed at all, because there is a really huge virtual assistant population and community in somewhere like the Philippines or India, Bangladesh, those kinds of places. So even when I've only been able to start them on, say, 10 hours per week to begin with, they've been really grateful and actually even been able to do things like purchase new modes of transport, like buy motorbikes and upgrade their house. So don't feel like you're doing them a disservice, because the thing is their cost of living is also lower, and that by being able to employ them at all is better than not employing them. So I just want to preface by saying that, of course, don't be asking people to work for super low rates, $1 per hour and everything. It needs to be a conversation to see that they're at least being able to put food on the table and provide security to their family. You'll find with online jobs that they actually provide a lot of information as to the skill level around a whole host of different softwares and different aspects of online business available to you right from the beginning. So there really is a lot of potential for you to go and search and find the person ahead of time. However, what I do recommend is that you try and interview at least 3, but maybe more people for the role, so that you've got a bit of variety. And again, so you're not just hiring for skill, but you're actually hiring for company fit. It's really important that the personality of the person is a mesh with you, especially if it's your first hire, because you are going to be dealing with them one-on-one pretty regularly. And if you don't get along with them, you're going to resent having to do that, and you could actually put your business behind. So make sure that you interview at least 3 people so that you can find who is the best cultural fit for your business. Before I have these 3 conversations, I like to send that position description that we worked on earlier ahead of time, so that that person has questions for me that they might have around the role prepared in advance, and so that they're not blindsided by the expectations or the details of the role when they get onto the call. Whilst I love onlinejobs.ph, you could also go the likes of Fiverr or Upwork, or even somewhere like Facebook and Facebook groups, to find someone who will be a fit for your business. If you're hiring more locally, you could decide to use something like Craigslist or an online jobs forum, or again, going somewhere like Facebook and even posting a position description to your Facebook page or your Instagram to see who in your audience is interested in the role. So now that you've hired your new assistant, it's time to figure out exactly how you're going to make this new relationship work. As I mentioned earlier, I have a few different pieces of software that I use in my business to keep everything straight. The first 2 of which are Slack for communicating with my team, and ClickUp for managing all of my tasks. I really make sure to have these 2 things separate, because I've found that when there's too much communication that happens in ClickUp, it gets really messy and you can't really manage tasks and projects in Slack. But I find them to be a really great duet or coupling, and you can actually integrate them so that they speak with one another. If you're not really interested in ClickUp, there are other options out there like Asana or Trello or Monday or Basecamp. There's lots of different task management softwares. I love ClickUp because it has so many customizable features that really suit my business. And again, if you're interested in learning more, you can check out my video that's coming out next week, or go and grab my course, ClickUp Coach, which is going to walk you through my exact system for managing my business. As I said, I've managed all of my meetings with my virtual team using Zoom, and this is a really low subscription cost of like $15 a month for me to be able to have as long a meetings as I want. But they do have a free option, which I believe limits your meetings to only 20 minutes, which could still be possible for you. However, I think that it's a really worthwhile investment for that $15 a month. The last 3 pieces of software that I use include LastPass, and this is for me to share any passwords that I need to share with my team so that they can access various softwares that I have access to. I use the Google Suite, really, the Google Drive, to be able to share documents, Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, depending on what I'm creating. And this is another great way, and it's super easy to share documents with your virtual team. And in terms of paying my virtual team, I prefer to use PayPal. I have used TransferWise in the past, which really has a super low cost conversion rate, and you're not really losing any money to paying for that conversion rate. But I've just found that it's a little bit tricky and not as reliable, and so I just prefer to use PayPal. However, when I do pay using PayPal, I always make sure that I take on all of the costs and select the option where it says I'm sending something to a friend, because I don't think it's fair to lay those costs on my team when they're already doing such a great job for me. Whilst I mentioned training your team earlier, I just want to go back and talk more in depth about how you're going to train this new person when they come onto your team. And the first thing I want to say, as I mentioned before, is to block that time out in your calendar. I know sometimes I feel like training my team is like I'm wasting time or I'm losing time for other things. But the truth is, when you're training your team, you're actually investing time into your business and to your business's future. So as best you can, if you can shift your mindset around the time that you spend training your team, you're going to end up being so much more grateful and happy about that time that you are investing. Depending on the type of tasks that you're outsourcing, I recommend that you create a training plan. Now, this plan is going to be a step-by-step, and I recommend that it go anywhere from, say, 4 weeks to 3 or 4 months. And that is because you really want to give your team enough time to feel really secure in their roles. If you've ever worked in a corporate environment, you'll know that they tend to have between 3, 6, and 12-month probation periods. So us as virtual businesses, we really can't expect any magic or more from our team, thinking that they're going to pick up stuff so much quicker. They are still an employee, and they still need to become familiar with your style, your business, and your goals. So you really need to allow enough time. If anything, when you're putting this training plan together, I highly recommend that you don't be optimistic, and if anything, you give more time than you think is actually going to be needed, because it's far easier to speed up a plan than it is to try and push it out when you're trying to fit other things in your business around that person being skilled in the new thing that you're training them up on. When you're putting that training plan together, make sure that you prioritize those tasks first that are going to help grow your business. There's no point in hiring someone and getting them to do lots of backlogging or admin stuff that isn't necessarily growing your business in the beginning. That stuff can come later once they have a good handle on all of those tasks that are actually helping to scale your business to that next level. When it comes to training too, it doesn't all need to be in person. And in fact, any time where I'm able to pre-record training and provide it to my team, I often use something like Loom to record my screen and show them a process that I've been doing that I want to pass on. This is actually a big time saver, and it's far better for you to have something really concise recorded that they can go over and over again to really cement that learning in their head. Of course, you're always going to have your software available to you, like Slack, if they've got additional questions, but this is also a way that you're almost starting to create standard operating procedures or SOPs for your business. So if that person moves on, you'll have someone else come in and be able to watch those exact same trainings. When it comes to SOPs though, I don't recommend that you go and spend a lot of time creating really detailed written plans with step-by-step instructions. If anything, it's far more effective and time efficient for you to record a video of yourself doing it and provide it to your team to watch and learn from. Of course, you can create those more detailed written SOPs in the future from those videos, but there's really no need to do it in the beginning, and it's only going to slow your training down. If you want to learn more about how to train your team using SOP strategies like that, I highly recommend that you read the book Clockwork by Mike Michalowicz, where he talks a lot about exactly how he trains his team in the most efficient manner so that they're super skilled on that new thing and you're not spending a lot of time creating all this additional work. If you're still not sure which tasks you need to outsource to a virtual team, how does 136 ideas sound? Well, I have 136 tasks to outsource to virtual assistants as a list that you can download so that you can get the ball rolling and really get an idea which things in your business you absolutely shouldn't be doing anymore. Because there's a really good chance you've just been doing them on autopilot and have no idea what you're actually doing in your own business. To grab that, you can hit the link in the description below or head to madisonmanathunga.com/VA. I would love to know, what kind of virtual team member are you bringing onto your business? Let me know in the comments below, and make sure that you hit the subscribe button and that notification bell, because in my next video, I'm going to be breaking down that ClickUp strategy I mentioned so that you can see exactly how I use ClickUp for my business so that my team knows exactly what they're working on. Until then, keep building that freedom reality, and I'll see you in the next video.